The consent agenda is approved. And we can move on to superintendent updates and board updates.
All right, well, I apologize because this has been a very long meeting, but my board meeting report is going to be a little bit long tonight because I'd like to talk a bit about school security. Okay, please have some music. With the events that happened in Buffalo, New York, in Texas, and right before we walked into this meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, school shootings and shootings other places in general seem to be amplified the last little bit of time. So I'd like to take a little bit to review what we currently place, and I sat down with Tony and I sat down with the police chief today and Lieutenant Peterson to talk about what we do have in place and some of their thoughts on things we could do to improve what we have in place. So I've broken this up into 3 categories. Physical security, meaning the physical things we have in our buildings, operational security, and finally what I'm entitling preventative security. So starting off with all of our exterior doors are locked. We have camera systems in place at most of our buildings. They're being upgraded at all of our schools as part of bond funds. Those upgrades will be complete by the end of the 22-23 school year. And the new camera systems as they come in are pretty fantastic. You can, if you saw somebody that might have done something in a red sweatshirt, you can program with the computer and say, find me everybody in a red sweatshirt, and we'll literally find that person. Or you can draw a line in front of a bathroom and say, I need a snapshot of anybody that's walking into that bathroom, that sort of. So they're pretty impressive systems we're installing. We do have security vestibules at many of our school sites. All of our schools will have them as part of bond improvements. This will allow us to control who comes into the building, at least through the front door. And by trying to keep all of our exterior doors locked, it really is, the goal is to create one point of entry for our schools. Now, that doesn't stop somebody from propping a door open, they shouldn't, nor does it stop a set of 2 students of one letting in an exterior door somewhere else. All of our buildings have multiple exterior doors, really because of fire safety. You have to have those exits to go through that. So in terms of proposed improvements on the physical site, the police don't really have anything. I think our buildings are pretty safe. They're going to have their SROs walk through the buildings to look for additional physical security improvements. These may come in the idea of putting fencing in places we don't have them. Our campus is pretty open right now in terms of fencing. They may come in just improving some of the fencing we have in places. And we may look at exploring some of these recommendations in part on projects, especially if we have a little bit of extra leftover money. Not that any of us left over because we have a very long list of projects to do. Also, in terms of police access to our building right now, our SROs have keys to the building, and not all police officers do. And so we'll look at upgrading our card technology and giving more officers a way to enter the building if they need to. So that'll be part of that as well. In terms of operational security, we currently have 6 armed SROs in partnership with the Redmond PD and the Deschutes County Sheriffs. Our SROs work to provide security and work with school administration to investigate both crimes committed by students and crimes committed to students. A lot of the SROs are involved with child crime scenarios, which is unfortunately more common than we'd like to know. One of our SROs is actually a member of the SWAT team, so they have a lot of expertise into that space. Our school administrative staff and our student management teams are working with students every day to identify students who potentially pose a threat or who are in need of mental health support. And that's really our first line of defense, are the folks that are working in their building. All of our staff members are trained in our standard response protocol, and we drill regularly. We do lock the schools down in response to threats, as we can have evidence both by the lockdowns at Ridgeview High School and City and Middle School this year. The state police have a tip line that is currently available to all students and parents to report any security or safety concerns. This is developed by the Oregon State Police. It's been in place for a number of years. The Redmond Police Department trains in active threat responses at least once a year. Similar training occurs with all the Central Oregon police forces. This is something I didn't know. I just found out today. The Redmond Police Department, as all police departments are in Oregon, is able to petition a judge to issue an extreme risk protection order if an identified individual is deemed to be a threat. So if we have a student that could be a threat or a person that could be a threat, this allows them with a judge's order to confiscate weapons of up to a year. Now, this has never been done to a juvenile in the state of Oregon, but it has been done multiple times to adults. Generally, juveniles, parents take control of those weapons. Proposed improvements to operations, a couple of different things we looked at. We're talking about adjusting our current SRO schedules so they randomly appear at elementary schools and they're popping in and out. The Redmond Police Department feels like they have enough SROs dedicated to keep the schools safe now, but they do understand why people want more of them. Currently, all of our staff members are issued badges, but we have done a poor job as a district of wearing them all the time to make sure that we identify the right adults are on campus at all times. And so we'll be looking at reinforcing that with all of our staff members in the next year. We need to improve the promotion, the use of the OSP, the Oregon State Police tip line. Currently, we have pretty inconsistent use from building to building. Some of our buildings report a lot, and some of them report not at all. And so that's clearly something we need to advertise more, both parents and with kids in the room. We need to review our use of classroom lockdown devices. These are already in use. These are the ropes you see around the doors or the magnetic strips. And these are built, basically the doors are always locked. And to lock it, you just need to pull it or drop the rope around it. However, we haven't done a review lately if we've got those everywhere we need them or if people are using them effectively. So that's something we could do to kind of get through it. Do we need more of them? We need to improve our training for administrative safety protocols. This is, and I've talked about this one before, when the incident happened in Michigan, there's at least a lot of perspective from the school improvement, from the school administrator community. There was some basic errors made by the school administrators. And so we're going to do some extra work to make sure all of our folks are following the procedures they need to follow. The police department is currently, all police departments everywhere are currently doing the same thing with the Texas response, all reviewing their issues. Did they respond appropriately? How should that change what we're doing? Just like we always do across there. We're also going to schedule and practice with security procedures through tabletop exercises with police and school administrators. If you're unfamiliar with the tabletop exercise, this is literally we all sit around a table. They develop a scenario, and all the administrators and police would talk through what they would do in this situation. It's pretty common with law enforcement and first responders. They use tabletop exercises. It's not something we've done that much. We did a tabletop exercise earlier this year around, what did we do that around, Linda? Do you recall?
Complaint procedure.
Thank you. Around complaint procedures. We ran through some tabletop exercises with that. But just because we felt like
That makes me laugh. Like,
Well,
who gets to play the angry person?
well, we just felt like it was being done
That's
consistently, so we spent some time talking about that. So we're going to schedule some of these with our administrative team and with our police department in August to kind of walk through these scenarios to make sure we're feeling good about things.
Is
And then-
there an opportunity at that point for board members to be involved in those tabletop discussions or just to be a part of that process?
I mean, it's a pretty operational situation, but if you want to, I mean, you can be there and be part of that piece. But a board member wouldn't really have a role in that situation.
Right. I totally understand that, but just from an informational perspective, I think that there's questions that are coming up. And granted, when those questions come up about procedures like this, they are to go to you, but it's also helpful to have a little bit of knowledge about how this all works and plays together.
Well, it'd be a situation you have to come and observe because you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably do
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Okay, then we have our preventative security, and this is actually, even though it sounds, it's not as I don't know, as sexy as the rest of it, but it's probably the part that actually does us the most good. We have school counselors that are working with students every day. They're reporting students that are developing threats, the same as our school administrators. In partnership with the High Desert ESD, we have a student threat assessment system that's used to evaluate students of concern. and there's various levels of threat as we go through this. It's fairly intensive, and we do evaluate quite a few students each year as a piece of that. It's a very essential part of kind of our procedural work with that. And then finally, we have our mental health system that we've been building through our school. And this consists of our school-based health clinics that have mental health folks in them. This is part of our Bright program, part of our Step Up program, and our partnership with Rimrock Trails. And we do our best to have students screened if they have either behavioral or emotional issues placed in the correct program. So these kind of things are actually pretty important as part of what we build, safety and security, is making sure people are getting the help they need. Now, none of this does anything for the student that's been expelled 2 years ago and walks back into the school. And so some of the things we're dealing with right now, if you look at both the situation in Buffalo and the situation that happened in Uvalde, were students who had been expelled from school, who were not actually been in those spaces. They came back in sort of with a revenge scenario. In that situation, we're dealing with physical security and police response.
Are we right now, our administrators, are we doing anything to go check doors to make sure doors aren't being propped open? Are we figuring out how?
All of our administrators were reinforced that they needed to have them closed. They've been making those announcements with their staff. They've been reinforcing. The police have actually been going around and testing doors, randomly to make sure. And so far as I know, they haven't found them open doors.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed that just in reading and doing my own research regarding this topic, with social media monitoring.
So social media monitoring is interesting. We actually depend a lot on parents for that.
Okay.
As they're going through that. There are systems that create sort of a digital fence around an area, and then you get possible hits. The main problem is that so many hits come. We did some experiments. I did some experiments with my last school district, and it was fairly unsuccessful, just for those reasons. But a lot of things do get posted in social media, and we really depend on that tip line, or we do depend on the idea that people have to say something if they see something.
I really appreciate that your report both has, hardening of our schools, like improving our vestibules and improving the security, but also, and you've included this very important of softening our schools, where we are creating places where students feel recognized and seen and welcomed, and their social emotional needs are met. I would also be very interested in talking about or understanding in the threat assessment is all that is so important, but also curious as to what we're doing to try to keep students in schools and in a restorative fashion, that they have the opportunity to restore their transgressions, and rather than just boot them out when they will then become angry and isolated and separated and no longer part of the community.
It's really a, yeah, and you make a good point. And also, I actually talked to the police chief about this today as well. It is a tough piece on that. The only real restorative practice we have in place right now is with drug use. Part of our piece with Rimrock Trails was that a student that was using drugs on campus or reported by the parents wouldn't necessarily be expelled from school. They might have a shorter suspension under the idea they then get some treatment. And so we wouldn't lose the student, right? Really, to go back to the situation with the student in Uvalde or whatever, who had been, as far as I know, had been expelled from school. When we have a student who's kicked out of school completely, we have absolutely no control. We're not watching or taking a look at it. On the other hand, there are times when students are doing things that are so dangerous to a school, we just simply can't have them.
Right.
And so that creates a real problem. We bridge that a little bit with our step up program. Various students that are expelled from school either get their services at step up, or sometimes it'll be done online, but very rarely in our district do we just lose control of kids completely unless a parent pulls them. That's not our intention. But your point is well made. Restorative practices, and we're kind of experimenting with them right now.
And yeah, it's time consuming and it's hard to do and it's scary because you have kids that have done things that you're, that on first blush would be non-negotiable, but yeah, I'm super curious about the benefit of those things and continuing to look at disciplinary rates and who's being disciplined and how, and is there opportunity to do more restorative so they still feel a part of the community. I mean, we know statistically that some of these people that end up doing these horrific things have been the victims of bullying themselves, and this is a response to feeling othered and bullied. And I love all of these preventative security things that are about creating schools that do better or are better, safer, more welcoming places for students who might not have felt that way.
The hard thing is you don't get data on the ones that didn't shoot up a school, that's thought, ideally that's all of them, but that's the hard benchmarks to figure out successes.
I mean, it is difficult. If you just think about the COIC presentation today, right? So we have students who sort of disappear on us,
Right.
and then we try and find them, and work through it, that kind of stuff. But it is hard. We do have, just like, I think I forget what it is, like 11% of the population of the United States are criminals, have been in jail or have been that kind of thing. And that same amount of people exist inside the school. Right? It's just a little more condensed of an atmosphere. And so it becomes a problem because we have to try and keep everybody safe, try and keep everybody on track. And there are groups of people who are trying not to. And so it's difficult. I mean, what you're saying is true. It's just hard to pull it off.
So is there a way, I mean, I know we talked to Chad about this, but is there a way to get our construction done on these schools, all the schools that need the vestibule as a priority, vestibule, I would, however I'm saying it,
Yeah,
but
I'll talk to him.
because
He's got things lined out.
to start next school year, knowing that we have that secure space in between
Right.
people coming in and out.
I'd be curious to know how many schools don't
Don't
have
have it.
that. And maybe not public.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
You're gonna be able to see
I don't know,
it walking
yeah.
into the building.
I could talk about it for a little bit, for instance, but even ones that do, let's say Terrebonne, for instance, it doesn't have a secure vestibule space, but on the other hand, they keep their doors locked
right.
on the outside. And that locked door where they have to let people in kind of helps with that. It kind of helps that piece. And that's what we're asking all of our folks to do right now. Now, of course, that's one of the things people hated about COVID.
Right.
Was we were keeping our doors locked. And this really requires us to go back to that stance where we say, who are you? Why do you want in our building? And I mean, part of the problem is, it's best for us to surround our schools with a cyclone fence with concertina wire on top, right? But on the other hand, what does that say to the community? It says, yeah, don't come in. We don't, this is a jail. And that's exactly what we don't want to project to people. Right. But so there's this balance between what's safe and what's welcoming. And how do we make that? But we think the secure vestibules will help because it'll allow people to step in, talk to the front office, whoever's in there, before we allow them in.
So how many schools are we talking about? Because I know quite a few of them already have that. I mean.
Right, but not all of them have sort of electronic means to do that. I mean, say take a Ridgeview. Ridgeview has that, but there's not a window into that space to find out why are those people there? Or how do we let them in, right? And so there's different pieces where we have that, but isn't necessarily as clean as we need it to be to make it secure, the security work.
So the technology of the cameras, would that allow?
It could.
Okay.
I'm not privy to exactly how every plan is set up.
Yeah.
So.
So if they have it on the door, then they might be able to.
Yeah, you might be able to see who's there, see why they want to come in. That's certainly possible.
And I feel like that was one of the things that Terra, where they actually had the camera, but every time somebody buzzed, they had to run up, maybe much like what you deal with here, the camera system that's up. So are there,
I mean,
are
in
all
the
the front
meantime,
doors? I
Well,
mean,
like Redmond High, for instance, has a situation where they could, at least it did until it got messed up, but I think they fixed it at this point, where they can buzz people in as they see, as they go in there. Now, Redmond High needs another wall behind where the secretary's at, right, and where the attendance person's in. They really need another wall there to kind of create that encapsulated space. And so a lot of our buildings have that. I mean, Obsidian Middle School will be, that's what we're doing there. We're putting fencing in the back, nice fencing. We're putting fencing in the back. And then we're creating that secure vestibule in the front that allows people in with that controlled entry. And that's really the goal all the way around.
are there schools that don't have the entry system with a push button and they're let in?
No, I don't think Tom McCall does, for instance. They have to physically go up and open the door, and Tom McCall, for instance.
But they're all buzzed in, right? No, there's no just like the front door's open. I mean, everybody has to.
Right
Push a
now,
button.
yes, that wasn't true a week ago. Several of our schools had to open the doors to make it easy for people to come in. Is that?
I said no more.
See, I mean, really the biggest weakness in school security is the human factor. Right?
Yeah.
It's like cybersecurity. It's, it's poor passwords, it's,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. I mean, elementary teachers like to boost their door open because it lets the air in, even though the elevator systems work well, you can still feel stuffy in there when you got 30 kids in there reading, right? And so it's an understandable human response. It's just not a good physical security response.
And I had another teacher give me an example in another district where they have badges. And, she said, I propped my door open the other day. I came in with an arm full of, I went out and I needed to, it was, my arms were full of things that I was carrying in and, I needed, I had to juggle all my stuff and swipe my badge. And sometimes it's easier just to prop the door open while I run out, get my stuff and run back in. So there's those situations too. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm just saying it's
That's
just the human element
But
of
it's human,
what,
right? I mean, it's what we deal with. And it's no big deal until it is.
right.
Yeah.
That's really the problem with all this stuff. I mean, this stuff is like getting struck by lightning, but lightning doesn't strike. Okay, so I just wanted to update you with where we're at on that so far.
Thank you for
Yeah.
getting together with the.
Sure, and I will continue to update this. Meanwhile, as we get a tabletop exercises scheduled, I'll invite you guys to observe those if you'd like.
Interesting.
And then we'll continue to talk about the practices.
Any board updates or he'll go home?
I have some.
All right,
I'll
go
keep
for
it.
it.
Go for it. I would
You
like
can
to-
have all of mine right now, right? I'm really tired.
I
and
think
really
we'd all
wanna
like
go
to thank Jill. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jill.
yeah.
Thank you.
Shreya and I went to the Hugh Hartman Library ribbon cutting today, which was a lovely ceremony.
Really was very nice,
It's a
yeah.
beautiful space if you ever have the opportunity. Enjoyed our PA graduation. John Bullock is hilarious.
Very funny.
And it was an impressive show of academic stuff.
There's a picture of me cutting the ribbon today. if you want to see that. I didn't know I was gonna do that, so.
Our Redmond High School, Deschutes Public Library partnership of the Little Free Libraries, the first 3 have been installed. And they're significant structures. I thought they were going to be very small and they're like this tall. They're big. So
They're meant to have
the first
books
one-
and camp.
right, the first one went in at Midtown Place, so that has been such a joy to watch. And then also I'd like to extend my appreciation to Redmond Collective Action and their recent adoption of Vern Patrick for the last school of their last Show the Love School project for the year. And that's it. You're welcome. I'm glad you stayed that
I was
extra
gonna
30
say
seconds.
all of those things.
I just wanted to also, one thing I wanted to point out, I went and watched the 5th grade track meet. And that's something that both of my kids missed out on, was doing that all school track meet, and it was awesome. Those kids,
I could hear it from my house.
yes, it was, people cheering, kids quitting, starting again. I don't know that I saw anyone barf. I'm glad I'm starting, but it was a finish, the coordination between the teachers and different schools, and they all had shirts.
My kids were that age, there was a state track meet here in Bend for kids.
I'm really was happy to see that going again.
Fun, yeah. Kids get along.
Are you sure, Michael, you don't have any?
I love being part of the RPA graduation. That was awesome. I love the rose ceremony that they gave away roses to influential people in their life. It was really special, really, really special. Because that's quite an investment getting your kids across the finish line there from the parent side and the people that just supported that. I just thought that was beautiful.
Well, as you know, next week we'll be doing our graduations on Wednesday and Friday. I hope everybody can make it. It is a very special event. It's fun sitting on stage and kind of working through all that. It's really kind of fun. And then, of course, Friday morning, 7:45, if you're able to make it, Redmond will be doing its scholarships. Excuse me, Redmond High will be doing its scholarships and its awards.
I recommend earplugs. They play very loud music.
It is very rock.
Or I'm sorry, I'm just old. It's also a possibility.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
No.
All right.
Too bad. We're done.